But without any more, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Ranahan.
Thank you for coming. Welcome to the God of Wonders series that we are continuing. We've been a long way together, haven't we? So it started with the nature of sound and then light, and then we're kind of in this ginormous bit in the middle of the nature of matter. Last time, everyone's favorite, we talked about pain, and there was like little kids here. And I was like, really? This is the one, huh? Oh, great. But it actually went okay. I talked to the parents afterwards, and they're like, oh, it's great. Okay. They're, yeah. So after we talk about the nature of matter, we finish with time and Eucatastrophe. So we're kind of in sort of the middle right now with the code of life. So tonight's talk, I'm going to make up for last time where I went a little bit long. So I'm going to be very concise and try not to talk too much, okay? Good luck, right? So I was sitting in church this past Sunday, and I was thinking about the talk, and then I just felt God just like open up my brain about some things. And so this morning I was changing the talk. So I'm going to be a little bit more tethered here because I want to go through some notes and make sure that I hit these points. And one of the fun things about being open to what God wants you to say is that He keeps changing it. I like having everything just memorized and automatic, but it turns out, He changes stuff. So we're gonna do that. So this is kind of a new version of this talk. Of course, we are tethered around Romans 1:20. For those of you who have been coming, this is sort of our marching orders for the series, and that is that Paul just kind of puts this in as an aside. He's talking about other things, and he's like, oh yeah, and by the way, it's super obvious. God is like blatantly obvious. You just look at what He made, right? And he just moves on with it. But I think it's worth pausing here. Now, this whole series, and I think it's worth at this point in the series to stop and say, why are we doing this? Why God of Wonders? Why take time, why take moments and try to see the world through a different lens? And it struck me this past Sunday that from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, the world, the media, everything is sort of giving you an interpretation of creation. It's telling you the meaning behind it. And it's ascribing meaninglessness to it. It's a random. It's like there is no purpose to it, right? And we're kind of subtly told this our whole lives. And so I feel like we've come to the place where we've lost our sense of wonder. Where this idea that you God of Wonders, like, oh yeah, that's a thing. You can look at what He made and learn about it, and there's some meaning and purpose behind it. I feel like we've sort of lost that. And it turns out that this isn't a new philosophy. So before we jump in, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about philosophy. I know, it's great. Then we'll get right back to biology. But for just like 2 seconds, I want to talk about philosophy because it sort of is this sneaky way that we've been brainwashed, and I want to like point it out. Oh, wait, why are your lips blue? Oh, it's a thing. Okay. Sorry. Squirrel. So today's talk is about the code of life. It's about genetics, right? And there's this crazy, and I just want to take a step back. Those of you who are in my genetics class, sorry. But tonight's about genetics, not like nitty-gritty. I know your brains are like, but more of a bird's eye view philosophical look at genetics, right? So every bit of life on the planet is made of the same 4 chemical letters, right? So whether you're pond scum or and I'm not using the correct genus and species for that because I don't have to because I don't teach bio 2 anymore. I know, right? Yes, that is. Very simple. Or you're a plant, or you're an animal, or you're a human, or whatever. There's only 4 chemical letters, okay? But we are vastly different than, well, some of us are. No, I'm just kidding. The sloth and myself, although both hairy, very different. Sloths are amazing. They grow stuff in their hair, like kind of ecosystems in their hair. I wash my beard, so you're fine. But we're all made of the same 4 letters, and so I need an explanation for this. Why, if we're made of the same 4 letters, are we so dramatically different? Have you thought about this question? Have you asked yourself this question? All life on the planet. Now, we're given an explanation. We're told it's just random, and the fact that we all have the same letters means we have a common ancestor. Okay, that you open up any textbook, that's your answer, right? There is, of course, another explanation, and that is that this is a design, that we have parts that are put together by a designer. And their similarity really shows design and ingenuity, right? So this idea that it's random actually is really super old. I'm picking on Hesiod, although it's not like he came up with this idea. He sort of codified it. So this guy was around at the same time as Homer. So we're talking like 750 to 650 BC, right? And so he kind of put together, he was actually known for like economics and other things, but he also put together this theogony paper, which codified their mythology, right? And it's super interesting. It's a great read right before bed. Those of us who like Greek. Yeah. No, I don't even. Yeah. But this story basically says this: in the beginning there was chaos, the god chaos. Chaos was always and is always, and from chaos came the gods, the lesser gods, and then the creation, right? So here's this guy, thousands and thousands of years ago, ascribing creation and saying it's just from chaos, it came from randomness, right? So you'd think, wow, that was thousands of years ago. We've so gotten better. We've so modified. We have so much more information now. We know an unbelievable complexity of life. We used to think it was just goo, and now you're studying molecular machines. So surely we've advanced. So the next person I want to pick on is Dawkins. Now he, of course, again, not to pick on him particularly, but he is one of those voices out there that's pretty prominent. And he's actually saying exactly the same thing. So this is a really popular book, The Blind Watchmaker, which is a fantastic title, because he's trying to hold both. Now, unlike Hesiod, now we know about the complexity of biology and life. We know about the fine-tuning of the universe, right? We know about these intricate molecular machines. My genetics people are learning about these intricate molecular machines. Right? So surely we've come up with a different answer, right? But we have the same answer, the same ancient answer. It's chaos. It's just entropy. It's time and chance, and that's all you need. And we throw in watchmaker because we cannot deny the irreducible complexity. We can't deny it. So what do? We say the watchmaker's blind. I know a lot of blind watchmakers. It's easy to make watches when you're blind, right? So that's a great title. Anyway, what struck me here is that we've, thousands of years later, massive advances in science and our understanding of the natural world, and yet we're being asked to swallow the same exact meaning, the same exact translation as thousands of years ago. That it's meaningless, it's purposeless. But here's what happens when you ascribe purposelessness to the world around you. You one day realize that me too, I am in the world around me. I am made up of the same stuff as these animals, and if their existence is meaningless, my existence is meaningless. And I would like you to then take it to its logical conclusion. If there is nothing above nature, if there is no supernature, if there is no ultimate source of truth and purpose and meaning, then everything really is relative. And then we can explain everything with chaos which means that the neurons firing in your head as you're writing this book are as meaningless as the Christian who is saying, I believe in God. They are equally meaningless. So if you believe in this assignment of all purpose and meaning to chaos, you've literally destroyed your own case, because that too is meaningless. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If you reduce it down to just the biochemistry and say it's just neurons firing, then there is no right or wrong, there is no truth. So why do you care about this theory or writing a book about it? None of it matters. It is only when you assign truth and meaning that you have something to argue about.
Mm-hmm.
You actually believe something is true. If, I don't know him, but if Dawkins, I'm assuming if he really believed this, I mean, then he must believe some things are true and some things are false, right? Why write the book if not? And if you believe some things are true and false, where did you get that idea? You have to have some other standard by which you're applying it. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm done philosophizing. So I want to say that this series is a realignment. It's putting the lens back on that says, no, I think there is purpose. I think there is meaning. And I think we can take a rational look at creation and find the fingerprints of God. And that's what this is about. So tonight, very quickly, I want to go through genetics. Not, I could just see in my students' faces, the ones that are in my medical genetics class right now, panic. Oh God, no. I want to take a bird's eye view of genetics. I want to talk about the fact that it is universal, and yet when you dig down and you understand how it works and what it is inexplicable in and of itself. If you're just looking at it, you're like, what? Right? I want to talk about epigenetics. I know it's getting better by the minute. I told you we get back to the biology. But I want to talk about epigenetics not as like the nuts and bolts, but as a symbol of free will. I want you to think about it as a picture of free will. The genes that you were born with, you have no control over. But what you do with them, your diet, your environment, you have a tremendous amount of control over. And again, if we're looking through the lens of purpose and meaning, we expect to see symbols, right? You expect there to be meaning behind what you're looking at, because it was made on purpose, right? And then finally, if we're not totally numb by then, I want to talk about information and meaning, symbolism and supernature, okay? So we're going to move quick. I'm just going to unpack these concepts. I'm going to let you think about them more later. I'm trying to plant some seeds here for thought, okay? Okay, so first I want to start with genetics and the code of life. So the way that I like to explain this to people is, imagine that you're writing a book, okay? And I've asked you, I've written you, like, I've told you to write a paper, but it's like a really, really long paper, like a book, right? And I've said, okay, I want you to write me a book. I have a couple of parameters for you that you need to fill. Okay, so you're going to write me a book. You can write a book, whatever you want. But I just got a couple parameters. Okay? You good? Parameters. Good. Okay. So this book has to be easy to read. I have to be able to access it. Maybe you can put it online. Right? But it also has to be like nearly immortal. In the sense that it has to be in a form, a physical form, that is very stable. So, writing it on a napkin, not a great idea, right? So I need it to be easy to access, get it out there, but it has to be very stable. Okay, so this is the book we're writing. I need you to put the following in the book. Okay, this is the information I'd like you to include in the book, because you're going to be, part of the book is sort of like a recipe. Right? So, because I can't go for a whole talk without talking about food, it's going to be a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, because they are the Lord's food. Okay, so we're going to put in there what we're building. Giant chocolate chip cookies, because nothing's better than chocolate chip cookies. Giant chocolate chip cookies, okay? So I need you to put in what we're building. No problem, great, okay. So then we're going to put in where should we build it? Okay, so what we're building, when is it appropriate to build this? All right, so you gotta put this in the book. It's got to be like all the instructions. Okay, follow me? Good. How much to build? Right? I know it's hard when it comes to delicious things like cookies. You want to be like, just keep making them. But at some point, maybe you want to switch it up and put like white chocolate chips in there, right? So you got to know how much to build. You gotta put in there where and how to store what you built, right? So don't put it in Tupperware that makes it taste gross later. You gotta specify where and how to store it, whatever it is you're building. Okay. So this is we're going to branch out a little bit here with this next one. When should we modify the book? In other words, let's say maybe because remember it's universal. So I'm going to use it, you're going to use it, you're going to give it to your aunt. Maybe she's vegan. Maybe she doesn't like delicious food. I don't know. I'm sure vegan's delicious. I just don't know because I eat chocolate chip cookies. Anyway, but the point is, maybe she wants to make cookies and you got to modify the recipe, right? And you want it as close to amazing as possible, right? So then when is it appropriate to modify and what bits can you modify and still get a delicious cookie? Do you know what I mean? So some bits, like, yeah, you can use different kinds of flour. Sure, you can use that weird flour, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's good, right? But there's certain bits you can't change, right? We need chocolate. I don't care what you say. We need chocolate, right? This is non-negotiable, okay? So we've got where we can modify it and when is it appropriate to modify, okay? This needs to be embedded in this recipe book that you are writing. When you suggest where and when, you gotta say how. Physically, how do I do this? You know, I need instructions on this. I need to know how and where to ship it. Okay, so like it's for you, yeah, but then you gotta send it out. How do I ship it? How do I package this thing to get where I'm going? Right? My mom used to like take a thing of bread and like break up little pieces and put it in there so that it maintained the humidity. Right? That's really smart. Go on. Right? If you've never done that before, yeah, you put it in the thing and yeah, it's great. So how do I ship it and where do I ship it? Where is it? Where do people love chocolate chip cookies? Where do they need chocolate chip cookies? Right? You know what I'm saying? This is mid-semester. We have a need. I'm blowing through chocolate in my office right now. It's true. It's true. When do we recycle it? In other words, at some point, the saddest point, the cookie is no longer delicious. It's so sad, but you're like, I gotta let you go. And it's like hard as a rock, and you know, even the birds are like, they peck it, and they're like, and that's when you know, probably not edible anymore. I don't know how we got to this point, but so at some point you got to recycle it, right? At some point you have to know, okay, now it's old enough, you got to recycle it. And then when do we change it? When do we branch out? When do we try, you know, 2 kinds of chocolate chips in there? When do we, pro tip, switch out a little bit of sugar for pudding mix? That'll change your life. You're welcome. That might be the reason why you're here tonight, just to know. And then how to repair errors. Now, assuming this is going to be the most amazing recipe ever, mind-blowing, everyone everywhere, right? They're going to want to copy it, right? So how do we copy it to maintain fidelity? I don't want, my 6-year-old with a crayon copying this recipe down. He's 7, but some things can get lost in translation, right? So we have to have instructions about this, and then how do we repair the errors when we're copying? How do we detect errors? Like, how do you know what's the original and what's wrong? How do you know what's false, right? Okay, are we doing good? These are just some parameters, just a couple guidelines here to help you. So I have like 3 more things. Okay, that's it, and then we're done. Just 3 more parameters for you. Okay, one, you have to be able to shuffle the chapters. Okay? I want to be able to take the chapters out of your book, shuffle them up, and then it's like lemon meringue pie. Shuffle it up, how to change a flat tire, which I just had the other day. Shuffle it up, how to build a bridge. Right? So all of those other things, plus I can shuffle it and get different instructions to make different things. Okay? This is all I'm asking. Okay? The book has to be so small that you could fit 10,000 of them onto the tip of a needle. I just need you to compact the information, that's all. Okay? Like, really compact it. And finally, the only other thing I'm asking is that you only use 4 letters. Okay? That's all I'm asking. Now, DNA fulfills all of these requirements and more. Okay? Now, if I asked you to do this, all of us in this room would be just headed straight for the struggle bus if we were trying to do this, right? Because this is crazy. And yet, from Hesiod to Dawkins, we're told a random, unguided process produced this book. Produced life. Gave us the code that gives us not just you, but trees, grass, frogs, like everything. That's a whole lot of faith. I mean, that's like mountain moving faith, right? Because you're looking at chaos and you're saying, yeah, sure, that can happen. And you have to know, because the different part of your brain is like, but I've never actually seen that happen. You know what I mean? Like, you've never just flipped cards and they land in this amazing house of cards. And that's simple compared to this, right? We just intuitively know from experience that things are going towards disorder, not randomly going towards order. And yet, we believe in spontaneous generation, even though we've disproven it. So this is the code of life. Fun facts. If a person could type 60 words a minute, that's pretty fast, 60 words a minute, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, it would take them about 50 years to type the human genome. That's a lot of letters, right? So 60 words per minute, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't even get the Lord's Day off. 50 years to type the human genome. So if you could take the DNA from the cells in your body, right? You take each chromosome, line it up, tie it together, you could reach to the sun and back, which is a rather large distance, over 600 times. And that's just the DNA that's in your body if you just put them end to end. And all of that is packaged into a nuclei, which again, 10,000 could fit on the tip of a needle. So, I think that's remarkable. And I think we need to just stop for a second and go, probably didn't happen on accident. I mean, I'm not like quoting scriptures. I'm just asking you to be rational. I'm asking you to be logical. What do you think are the odds of that happening at random? Like, what other, in your experience, like what other evidence would lead you to believe that that can happen random by an unguided process? So that is the code of life. Now I want to talk a little bit about epigenetics. So genetics, and this is in the context of free will. So the first bit is that DNA is super complicated and it's amazing, and that's probably not due to chance. The second bit of the talk is about epigenetics and as a model for free will. Okay? So epigenetics is simply the code above the code. And I have a video I want to show you to sort of highlight this.
A lot of people, who have their pets, they want to often clone them, and they want Fluffy back. And what I tell them is, you're not going to get Fluffy back. As a matter of fact, we actually cloned entire herds of cows from a single cell from the same animal, and they develop a whole hierarchy just like we do in humans. So you have timid cows and aggressive cows, and they're all clones. So they develop their own behavioral patterns. So the environment has a very profound impact on your development.
Let's say we decide to take DNA from Einstein's hair and grow some new Einsteins. Those clones would not be the man who wrote E equals MC squared. Each would have a unique personality shaped by his environment.
So this is just a great graphical way to think about Einstein as a rocker. I like the plumber guy, but I think that could have been real. The football man, I don't think he was like physiologically, but the point is, the same DNA. In this case, they cloned a herd of cattle. They took the same exact DNA, cloned them out, and based on their environment, they developed very different traits. So that's a great image for you. You had zero control over the genes in your body, right? You were just given that DNA. You have zero control over it. And yet, you have a dramatic control over the expression of those genes. The way you live and what you believe about yourself can dramatically impact your health. There's a genetic component to that. It's for real. So this idea of genetics, I think, is mirrored in the Bible. I'm going to throw this out there. You can think about this. You can pray about this. We are given a scripture that says God is love, that He created humans to be love, to be intimate with Him. We decided to choose self over God. God makes a way for us to be close to Him again. All of this we know and was completely out of our control. I didn't tell Eve to eat the apple or look the other way when she did, or I didn't like blame her when I wasn't there. I was born with this, right? And then like God choosing me, like that's crazy. I don't. So this is all outside of my control. And yet we have this scripture in Philippians. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and act according to His good purposes. Work out your salvation. I love it. Work it out. Those of you who are in genetics, the DNA is packaged up, right? In order to get it, to read it, to make something from it, you have to unpack it, right? Your faith is worth exactly what it costs you. Your faith is worth exactly what it costs you. Try to unpack it and see what happens. Like, in other words, if you want to go beyond fire insurance, you gotta do something with it. You gotta unpack it, right? And this means taking the code, taking what was given to you and doing something with it. Not just, having your parents' faith or whatever. This is your bit. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will. But there's a part for you to play, to unpack this, to figure out what is there. Last time we talked about unpacking the potential of the seed. Do you want to know what the potential is? Do you really want to know? So that is the epigenetic side. Now I can't stop here without a little bit of a tangent. Not that Jesus is a tangent, but So in genetics, we learned that humans have 46 chromosomes. 23 from mom, 23 from dad. Right? And then we read this bizarre account in the scriptures that says that Jesus was fully human. So we would anticipate he has 46 chromosomes. He's fully human, right? And that he is the second Adam. So in the scriptures it suggests that the first man, Adam, became a living soul. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. So there's this continuity. He's fully human. He's considered the second Adam. But have you ever wondered, like Mary, this immaculate conception happens, right? So we learn in genetics that Mary gives 23 chromosomes. She produces an egg, an oocyte, which has 23 chromosomes. She needs another 23 chromosomes to have a baby. Where did those other 23 chromosomes come from? Like, I don't know. I'm not starting a cult here or anything. But I'm wondering if these allusions here to him being the second Adam aren't just like philosophical or spiritual, but the Bible's pointing at something biological as well. Like, what if God took Adam's DNA and gave that to Mary so that Jesus is both a biological second Adam and a spiritual second Adam? I don't know, but it's an interesting idea. What if the redemption of the human race is a genetic redemption as well as in every other way? Like, he goes back to the beginning. In other words, redemption works in both directions on the time scale. Right? Just a thought, just a little something to throw out there. Okay, now we're going to get to the crazy parts. Jump drive! They're so crazy, am I right? So what's, okay, let's say I take this USB drive and I put it on a scale and I weigh it and it weighs 5 grams. Huzzah. And then I put on Lord of the Rings, the movie, on that jump drive, right? So it's like 3 gigs, 4 gigs, I don't know. Depends if you get the extended edition, which is the best one. And then I load this huge movie and then I put it back on the scale. How much does the jump drive weigh? 5 grams. Wait, but I just put a whole movie on it, right? So I've added information. Now here, if you're just joining us, if you're just waking up, welcome back. Now is the bit where you want to pay attention, okay? I've added information, but it has no mass. It is immaterial. Does that make it unreal? No. Information, the fact that it is immaterial, the fact that it has no mass, does not make it unreal, especially if you want to watch The Lord of the Rings. Right? So, we are suggesting that something immaterial matters, that it is real. So why do we refuse to look at an immaterial source to give us information about meaning? Do you understand what I'm saying? We're looking out at the material universe and we're saying there's something else there. This is a symbol. This has more. This has meaning, right? And we say no, immateriality doesn't matter. And yet, in our everyday experience, we know that it matters. Even if it doesn't have mass, even if it's immaterial, it's still real. It can convey information. It can change the way we see it, right? But we are dead set against bringing in an immaterial explanation when we know clearly, right? So that's concept 1. This is the last concept. I can explain to you why this appears using physics and chemistry. I can reduce what you're seeing down to the laws of physics and chemistry and demonstrate contrast and all of that, right? I can clearly and completely explain it. But there's a whole other non-material layer of meaning to what's up there right now. And you know what it is because you can interpret symbols. Right? So this is not reducible. This cannot be fully explained with just the laws of chemistry and physics. Do you understand what I'm saying here? I can give you a full explanation of this with purely materialistic detail, and you will not have got the full picture. You will not be able to fully comprehend that this is symbolic. It is, of course, material, right? There's color differences here. This is clearly material. In addition to that, it is symbolic. It carries meaning. We, outside of this, have put meaning onto it, so that when we see it, we interpret not just the material, but the immaterial information. Okay? What I want to suggest then, I started with this question. I said, every bit of life on earth has these 4 letters, right? And yet you and I are sitting in a room right now doing very different things than what the rest of nature is doing, right? Why? We're made of the same stuff, we're the same material, and yet we do very different things. Could it be that we are symbols? That we carry meaning beyond just our parts? That the human genome is the symbol that there is something else outside of nature. When we look at the word joy, we understand that that carries meaning beyond the material. When I look at a human, the Bible says you're made in the image and likeness of God. In other words, something outside has put meaning on top of the human genome. When you walk around, when you talk to people, you are the symbol of God on the earth. You are, in addition to the material that you're made of, the image bearer. You need to explain to me why, if you're made of the same 4 letters as everything else, you laugh, you love, you cry, you build things, you create art. Why do you do that? Using purely material as your explanation, there's no answer. It only, in my opinion, it only makes sense if you understand that something from outside nature has imposed, has put on, has given value to, has made us the symbol. So that we can now understand and say, okay, yes, I'm made of the same stuff as the plant. No, I'm not the same. Because I have been marked. So when you go out, think about that. You are the image bearers. That you are, in other words, the proof that God exists.